If the Buffalo Bills can pay Khalil Shakir, why won't they pay James Cook? We're going to explore that and more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion. We've got some great stuff to get into. Let's not waste any time and dive right in. But real quick, I do want to remind you that I am still in the North Carolina mountains. So if you're on YouTube and things look a little different, well, we're spending a couple days out here in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'll be back midweek in my normal setup. All right, let's dive into this. First one comes from Chuck. Chuck says, I have a question for you with respect to James Cook. I know there's a lot of conversation about $15 million a year being too high, but maybe I'm missing something here. I believe Khalil Shakir, who I love, just signed the contract that James Cook wants, $15 million a year. Shakir had 821 yards and 4 touchdowns, and we didn't bat an eye at that contract, even applauded the team-friendly deal. Cook had over 1,250 yards and 18 touchdowns, and we can't believe he would want so much. I think Shakir got 4 years, which is a lot for a running back, but why not give him a 3-year extension? All right, let's dive into this. This is a good question. I've seen some other people say this. This is not apples to apples. These players play different positions, and the markets for receivers and running backs are very, very different. Wide receivers get paid a lot more than running backs. The top paid receiver in the NFL gets paid $40 million a year, a little more actually. The top paid running back in the NFL is half of that at $20 million. The top 21 wide receivers are paid more than the highest paid running back. And Shakir didn't get $15 million. He got $13.25 million per season, which makes him the 27th highest paid receiver in the NFL. If James Cook were to get the $15 million from Buffalo, that would make him the 3rd highest paid running back in the NFL, tied with Derrick Henry, and just behind Christian McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley. I love James Cook. I really do. I think he's a great player. But if we're being honest, does he deserve the same type of money as Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey? I think he's a tier below that. And so you want to pay players the appropriate value. I'm hopeful that the Bills can get something done with James Cook at a reasonable number, but right now the numbers just aren't reasonable. And so I've seen other people bring up this Khalil Shakir point, and it's just very different. It's not apples to apples. And I'll say this. We saw the Bills offense last year without James Cook. It was the Jets game. Bills rushing offense was terrific. We saw the Bills offense without Khalil Shakir against Houston, and my goodness, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen Josh Allen play, especially since Josh Allen reached elite status. And then he tried to gut it out for that Baltimore game. It didn't look good. I think Khalil Shakir might be a more valuable player to the Bills than James Cook. But point being is that the difference in positions makes this not the same. You can't just say, well, Cook had 1,200 yards and 18 touchdowns, and Shakir had 821 yards and 4 touchdowns. What are we talking about? I don't think that's an appropriate way to look at the conversation. I don't think that leads to gaining the right perspective for what's fair and not fair. I think you have to look at it relative to their respective position groups. Danielle says, I'm confused why players hold in. What is the point? What do they get out of that? Especially with a player like James Cook that is on their rookie contract. Like, he has a contract. Can he actually threaten to not play the season? So let's talk about it. Holding in is a new thing in the NFL. Players used to hold out. So hold out simply means that you're not in attendance at all. hold in means that you're in attendance, but you don't participate. The whole point of a hold in from a player's perspective is to avoid fines. If you're not there, if you are truly holding out, you're getting fined $50,000 a day. If you're holding in, well, that doesn't apply. So it's a way for them to avoid the fines that come from actually not being there. But the same point is made where you're kind of forcing the issue by creating some drama and hoping to get to the resolution that you're hoping for. That's why they do it. Now, as far as this bleeding into the regular season, I mean, even if you miss a preseason game, you hold in for a preseason game, you're missing out on a week of regular season pay. And of course, this same applies for regular season games. So I don't see it going that far. But I think that plays into the timing of this decision for James Cook to begin his hold-in, is because the Bills do have their first preseason game coming up this weekend, and I think he's doing everything he can right now to force the issue. I don't think the Bills are going to budge, because ultimately they do have the leverage. If this is truly about business for James Cook, well, he's not going to just give up his money. And so I think he's trying what he can for now, but I don't expect the Bills to budge. And so that would be the incentive for a player to do a hold in. It's a new thing. It's a new world we live in across the NFL with players holding in. Paul says, can you explain the nuanced differences between a punt return and a kick return? It's a phenomenal question. Glad you asked this, because they are very different. And it's very important for us to acknowledge that they're different and understand that players that serve as kick returners, it's not just a one-for-one where they could be a punt returner, because it is very different. Let's talk about it. Kick returner, especially now that the rules have changed, kick returns have basically become run plays in the NFL. They took the air out of the play, right? You catch the ball, there's no threat of immediate contact, and you run, right? It's very different. And the defensive players, the coverage unit can't even move until you touch the ball, right? Or it gets into the landing zone. So that lack of a threat of immediate contact is a big difference, in addition to it being a more condensed play, where a punt return is way, way different. You're fielding the ball that's coming at a much different arc. You're in a static position. There's threat of immediate contact, and it becomes way more important on punt returns for you to be great at fielding the ball, to be great at taking care of the ball, and making the right decision, whether you're going to field it or not, or you're going to do a fair catch, you're going to catch it on the hop. And it's a much more of an open field play, so their dynamics are just completely different. So you can find some guys that are good at both, but more often than not, they're kind of specialists within the different components of returning. And that's why if you can find a guy that can do both at a high level, it can be valuable to your football team. But that's not often the case. In fact, I've said this before. I think the big thing with a kick return now, one of the new rules, you got to be able to break a tackle. You know, you got to have some physicality to break a tackle, where in the punt return game, I think you got to be more twitchy and elusive and shifty to be able to make people miss in different types of ways. On top of, again, catching a punt way different than a kick, and all the dynamics surrounding that lead to the necessity for a different type of skill set. All right, coming up next, good question about Keon Coleman and his development and how it contrasts with some of my pre-draft assessments with him. We'll do that and a whole lot more on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year and every year, I play on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or you're a veteran in your 1 millionth league. I've used Yahoo for years, and I love how smooth the draft day experience is. Plus, the mobile app is awesome. It's easy to set things up, and the smack talk hits a little different on those message boards. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, folks, welcome back. Quick programming note. Now that the Bills are getting into their game mode, right? There's a preseason game this weekend. Bills squad is going to go live right after the game. So myself, Jeremy White, Jerry Ostrowski, after this Bills-Bears preseason game, we're going live. So what does that mean? We won't have the show on Thursday. So our programming is going to be a little bit different because we want one of those shows to be an immediate post-game show for you. So no Bills squad on Thursday, but it will go live right after the Bills and Bears preseason game, or is it the Giants this week? Excuse me. Whatever game they play this week. I think it's the Giants. After that game, we're going to go live. So no Thursday Bill squad. That episode will be live right after Bills and Giants. All right. Tim says, had a question about Keon Coleman. Has he proved anything more than your original scouting report on him? Because he seems like he's a dynamic receiver when he's hot, but when he's cold, he's not. And if I remember, you said he had the best highlight tape in the draft, but didn't have the consistency you were looking for. Just wanted your opinion on the topic. Thanks again. It's a good question here. And let's kind of get into it. I don't prefer wide receivers with Keon Coleman's skill set in a high volume role. That skill set is useful, but there's a lot of variance with it. Why? Because he lacks the ability to create consistent separation. And when you lack that ability to create consistent separation, when you're targeted, the catch points are going to be crowded. You're going to have to play through traffic. You're going to have to win in contested situation. And there's just higher variance with that, as opposed to, hey, I can get open. I can present an available target with nobody around me. And that's a lot easier to catch a football, right? And so I just think that type of skill set, there's just more variance with it. Now, the good news with Keon Coleman is that there's still room for growth. Now, I don't think he's ever going to be a consistent, dynamic separator. But I think he can continue to learn the game. His football IQ can develop as a guy that really didn't start playing full-time football until a couple of years ago. So he can really gain more of a feel for everything about the position, but really the mental side where he can see and process coverage and get to spaces in zone and learn how to better leverage against man coverage, whether that's during his releases, throughout his route stem, at the catch point, at the top of routes, different ways to work his body so that he can create those leverage advantages and position himself to be in a good spot to win at the catch point. So there's different ways that he can absolutely develop. But if you're expecting him to run routes like Stephon Diggs, it's just not what he's going to do. And so I have seen some growth with the football IQ. I have seen some growth with how he's been able to find space and how he's playing more to his skill set. But if he doesn't gain that ability to create consistent separation, I think there's always going to be a high variance in what happens when he's targeted. And so we'll see how it goes. It's a skill set that the Bills signed up for. They knew exactly what Keon Coleman was when they brought him in. And now the onus is on Joe Brady and Josh Allen to maximize the investment. Josh Allen pounded the table for this guy. And it's clear that the team really wanted this type of skill set, right? They needed that X receiver. We heard that all throughout that process before they picked Keon Coleman. And so now they have to make it work. And I think he could be a good player. It's how consistent can he be based on his skill set if it truly is going to be a high volume role for this offense. Kevin says, what are the range of outcomes for the defense this season? What's the floor? What's the ceiling? And what do you think is the most likely outcome? I'll tell you this. I'm expecting a lot of top 10 rankings for this Bills defense. Now, I'm concerned about injuries. But outside of that, there really shouldn't be many excuses. The coaching talent is there. You got Sean McDermott. You got Bobby Babich. You got Ryan Nielsen. You got Mike Pellegrino. You got Al Holcomb. Come on now. You got plenty of good coaches, and you got plenty of talent. The amount of first-round picks that are on this defense, your first 5 picks from this draft, all on defense, your most significant free agent dollars on defense. Come on now. This defense needs to be good. Do I think it needs to be the best in the league? No. But this should be around a top 10 defense, whether it's EPA, scoring, total yards, takeaways, sacks. What deficiencies exist within the coaching and the players? I don't see much. It's got to come together. But it comes down to me, I think it's the deployment of the talent and play calling. Can the Bills maximize their talent, and can they put them in the best positions to be successful? Because I think that's what it's coming down to, is a couple plays here against Kansas City in the playoffs need to go more the Bills' way. And I think a lot of that is defensively. Being able to get one more stop on third down, one sack, one takeaway. Having the right thing dialed up at the right moment. But I think they've got what they need to be every bit of a top 10 defense, and that's my expectation. I think the floor should be like the 2000 defense. But I'm certainly hope it's better than that 2000 defense, to be honest with you. I have high expectations. And the Bills have earned those expectations by what they've assembled. Now go do it. Daniel says, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, everyone was raving about their ability to apply pressure with 4 and keep 7 men in coverage. That allowed the Eagles to keep Mahomes in check and keep sacking him. Now you and other podcasters are celebrating these new looks with 5-men pressure, saying it may be why the Bills win the Super Bowl. How come? Aren't we going to have gaps in coverage with only 6 men in the secondary? Really good question here. Getting pressure with a 4-man rush is always the best plan. Always. It's also very hard to do. And ultimately, the Bills have not been successful with it. Maybe for that was like a 9-game stretch when they had Von Miller before the injury. You're like, oh, this is what it looks like. Otherwise, the Bills really haven't been able to do it. And so that, for me, is where the intrigue comes in. It's something different. It's not playing on your heels and hoping that you can get pressure with 4 and, sustaining coverage. It's go after it. Do something different. And if the Bills can get consistent pressure with 4, which maybe they can with some of the reinforcements that they've added and some of the young players, then they're not going to blitz that much. But because they haven't been able to be consistent with the 4-man rush, thank you. Let's try a 5-man pressure with some level of consistency to see if that leads to a better result. And now, look, you're also talking about against Kansas City, and I understand being hyper-focused on Kansas City. That makes a lot of sense. But for other quarterbacks and other offenses that you play against, these 5-man pressures are going to be pretty effective. Think about against Tua. Think about against Justin Fields with the Jets. Drake May has a lot to prove as a quarterback of the Patriots. Probably pretty effective against Lamar Jackson. So you want to be able to play defense differently based on opponent. And, of course, you'd love to be able to rush 4 and actually work. It just hasn't for the Bills. Now, let me also say this. Right now, the toast of the league is this Eagles defense and the low blitz rate and what they were able to do in that Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes. Go back 1 year. Kansas City was the toast of the league on defense in 2023. They were the Super Bowl champions. They had the 6th highest blitz rate in the league in 2023. And that's why we have to be careful not to get so hyper-focused on the last game that we watched and what led to that result. There's a much bigger sample size of football that tells the real story. So, yeah, if you can do what the Eagles did and they were 8 deep with dudes on the D-line, then you've got something going. But most teams can't do that. And so you got to have more in your bag. And I'm excited to see that the Bills are putting a little bit more in the bag. All right, coming up next, some really good conversation on Tre'Davious White. We'll do that and more. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. It's surprising how much certain spending habits can add up, and Monarch makes it easy to identify them. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, folks, welcome back. Would love to extend an invitation to you to join the Locked On Bills sub-text community. It's a really fun thing that we've been doing for a couple of years now where I send text messages right to your phone. And you'll get my first reaction to all Bills news. You're going to get my in-game texts pretty much after every drive of a Bills game. I'm going to send a text to you. And guess what? That gets started this weekend when the Bills open up their preseason. And so come be part of that. You'll also get my all 22 film breakdowns from the Bills games. So a lot of incentives, and you get into our Discord channel where we are pushing 2,000 members and they're talking Bills and all kinds of stuff all day long. So if you want that sense of community, you want the text right to your phone, you want that in-game analysis, check out the Locked On Bills subtext community. There's a link in today's show notes for you to check that out. All right, next one comes from Mark, who says, with Max Hairston's injury, Tre White looks pretty locked in as the week 1 starter. When Hairston comes back, could the Bills potentially try to get Hairston reps by getting 3 corners in dime packages and moving Tre into the dime safety role? We saw Tre White play the dime role last year with Baltimore, and it seems the Bills want to get more athletic on defense and also get their first-round pick reps. Do you think this is a possibility? And if not, who do you see playing that dime role? I think this is an interesting idea. It really is. But I will say this. If you go back to the Baltimore dime package that included Tre White came on the field and he played outside corner, and then the other pieces moved around. Like Marlon Humphrey could go to the slot, and they were very interchangeable with our Derrick Washington and Kyle Hamilton at safety. So it wasn't quite the same. That was where Tre White came in and played corner. And so now we're suggesting that he's more of this dime player, which is kind of a slot safety role. And based on my exposure to the Bills last week, Cam Lewis is going to be your dime defensive back. And Tre White is not repped at all in that dime position. And the Bills are very big on reps. Bobby Babich, I think it was last year, he explained why in the past the Bills have been so static with their back 7 personnel, because he said when those parts are changed, you no longer have an experienced group working together. He'll tell you, if we got these 7 guys on the field and they've repped against all these different route combinations and passing game schemes from all these different coverage concepts, that group is cohesive and they're going to be able to play off of each other. Where all of a sudden you start putting Tre White in a spot where he's not repped, and even Maxwell Harrison for that matter, you're not going to have that same cohesiveness, and the Bills are concerned about that. So because Tre White is not repped in that spot and Cam Lewis is, it's my expectation that Cam Lewis is going to be the dime defensive back for the Buffalo Bills, and that's probably around a 15% of snaps role for this defense. Julia says, I know it's early and we've still got a few weeks before week 1, but I've been thinking about CB2. If Tre White's going to be the guy, how would you compare him against what Rasul Douglas provided last year? Could he have more upside than what we saw out of Douglas? Yes, I believe that for sure, especially after watching Tre White last week. Tre White has more athleticism than Rasul Douglas. He's more of a technician, and he's got a better understanding of the scheme. Remember when Rasul Douglas came to Buffalo and he did a press conference and said, look, I just asked Micah Hyde what to do on every snap, or Jordan Poyer what to do on every snap, and he did that. And then those guys weren't around, and so now Rasul Douglas is on the field in 2024, and look, he's got some athletic decline, but the impact was just really diminished, right? We didn't see the ball production that really has made Rasul Douglas an exciting player in the NFL, in addition to kind of losing a step, and the guy that even in his most athletic day relative to NFL corners was not super athletic. So I am more comfortable with Tre White in that role. Now, I will acknowledge that Rasul Douglas is a much better tackler and a much better run defender than Tre'Davious White. So there's your give, right? You probably get something back in coverage, you lose something tackling and playing the run. But we saw the age on Rasul last year, and the guy's still looking for a team. And he said no to the Dolphins. And that's a right there's a starting job. Like, what is he looking for? I'm curious to find out if he wasn't going to take that Dolphins job. Julius had a second question about Treylon Burks and Christian Wilkins. Both guys have been released, and what type of interest I would have in the Bills going after either player. I don't want to sign up for headaches. Tre'Davious White has been a headache in the NFL, even with the availability concerns. A very underdeveloped player coming out of Arkansas. I don't think he offers anything that Laviska Shenault, to be honest, doesn't provide this football team, and I'm not super high on Laviska Shenault. As for Christian Wilkins, I mean, talk about concerns. Really odd circumstances surrounding his release, and we know there's been some really odd circumstances whenever he's on a field with Josh Allen. So I don't want to sign up for that headache, and I think even more concerning is his foot. He's been in a boot for a long time. There's some questions about what he's done and not done to rehab the foot and how he's kind of pushed it. I've heard some very concerning things about that foot. So those are stay away players for me. I think you can get excited about the potential with either player, but let's be real about the current situation and trajectory. Neither is an appealing path for me. Richard says, I know in the past you've encountered questions about your personal side of your work in life. We all know your love and dedication for the Bills. How does the wife handle the workload? I know it's demanding at times, and I know you're a big family man. I'm not saying family life suffers, but you must juggle a lot. Just curious how you're able to kill it on our end and seemingly at home as well. You're a beast, and I appreciate all you do. Thank the wife and family for me, and I'm sure all of Bills Mafia would agree. Appreciate this question. I'll tell you this. The cheat code to life that I've discovered is waking up early. So I wake up in the 4 o'clock hour every single day, usually early in the 4 o'clock hour, and I get to work. Like, I immediately get to work. I use the restroom, I let the dogs outside, and get to work. And that window of like somewhere early in the 4 o'clock hour till about 8 or 8:30 is massive for me. That allows me to get ahead of the day. I get so much done in that window. And then from there, I just kind of work it in as I can. My wife and kids usually come downstairs between 8 and 8:30. I get myself involved in the morning routine, and then, they go do what they do for the day. And I get back to work. I help as needed. And I'm usually done working between 4 and 4:30 p.m. and try to go to bed around 9 so that I can wake up early. So my wife is amazing. Let's start there. She is an amazing mother, an amazing wife, and she does a lot, and we complement each other really well. But it's waking up early. That's the best thing I can tell you. It's those farmers' hours. I believe in them. And when you're working first thing in the morning, you're most sharp, you're the most refreshed, and it's the no distractions. Like, not only is nobody in my home awake during that time, there's no social media. People aren't emailing me. There's nothing to look at. It's just being productive, and I protect that time knowing that it's a window of opportunity to get ahead of the chaos of the day. If you wake up into the chaos of the day, you're behind, and I refuse to let myself be in that spot. So I guess that would be the answer. But we try to do our best to be fully present in everything that we do. Obviously, there's some challenges with that, but it comes down to waking up early. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. The Bills, again, preseason opener this weekend. Bill squad's going to go live right after that, and that also probably means some weekend content. So just be aware that the publishing schedule could be a little bit different because I want to get you that reaction. I want to get you that all 22 review. So just be mindful that I know that we're a daily podcast, but with the news cycle right now and when these games are, those days could be a little bit different. So just make sure you're subscribed. That'll make sure you don't miss anything. Take a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.